He began this year as a prince and he ends it as a civilian. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has paid a heavy price for his friendship with the disgraced billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew denies any wrongdoing, but there are repeated calls now for him to tell the full story of that.
Prince Andrew has surfaced from inside Sandringham itself. Staff say they found party bags containing drugs and sexual items after his private weekends. The claim comes from a senior royal author grounded in staff accounts. Those 40 words frame the issue plainly. A royal residence, household staff, items discovered after guests departed. The allegation stands apart because it places the claim inside a working palace, described by people whose role involved cleaning rooms after high-profile gatherings. The setting matters. The source matters. The timing matters. The location was Sandringham House, the private estate where the royal family traditionally gathers and where shooting weekends take place. According to reporting summarized by Robert Jobson, staff members cleaning guest bathrooms following one of Andrew's shooting weekends encountered bags left behind. These were described as containing drugs, lubricant, and exotic condoms. The discovery, as presented, came after guests had left and routine cleaning began. This allegation carries weight for 3 reasons. First, it arises from inside a royal property rather than a hotel or a rented venue. Second, the accounts come from staff performing routine duties, people positioned to observe physical evidence rather than trade in rumor. Third, the claim appears in a published work by an author with decades of access to royal households and sources, rather than a tabloid tip or anonymous forum post.
Oh, yeah. And I think these emails I wrote in a paper, in a column the other day, that, he lied. At the end of the day, after all that he's said and all of the interviews he's given and all the benefit of doubt he's been given, Andrew lied. He lied about the date. He said he had no contact. And it's also a pretty appalling email. And I've interviewed Andrew, I've interviewed Sarah, I know Sarah quite well.
Jobson's reporting frames these weekends as events presented publicly as traditional shooting trips, country sports, estate hospitality, quiet gatherings among friends. That description has long been the official framing. The alleged discovery clashes with that framing by introducing a private afterlife to those weekends, one that staff encountered once guests had departed and the facade of formality lifted. The allegation does not stand in isolation. Its impact comes from placement within an already fraught public narrative surrounding Andrew. Over recent years, his associations, travel history, and correspondence have drawn sustained scrutiny. The party bag claim intensifies that scrutiny because it describes conduct anchored to a physical place and physical objects rather than recollections years after the fact. Timing deepens the discomfort. The allegations surfaced alongside fresh releases of Epstein-related material in the United States, drawing renewed attention toward Andrew's name. As senior members of the royal family gathered again at Sandringham for Christmas, public focus returned to the same rooms, the same estate, the same name. Andrew himself remained absent from those gatherings. The coincidence feels stark. Jobson's account also challenges Andrew's own public descriptions of these weekends. In his widely watched 2019 interview, Andrew portrayed his country stays as straightforward shooting visits framed as conventional and restrained. The staff accounts described by Jobson present a different atmosphere once formalities ended. That contrast drives the allegation from curiosity toward credibility assessment.
Really, I think it's now time that Andrew did the decent thing and found somewhere else to go.
But who would have him? Maybe this supposed palace in Brunei, would he be welcomed into somewhere like
Probably.
that? Right.
Probably. I mean, he owns it. They gave it to...
Critically, Jobson does not present the discovery as gossip overheard at a distance. He presents it as something staff physically encountered during cleanup. That distinction explains why the claim refuses to fade quickly. Palace households operate with strict routines. Cleaning staff move room by room. Anything unusual draws attention because deviation disrupts established process. A bag containing illicit items would register immediately. The allegation also reopens an uncomfortable institutional question. Royal households rely on discretion from staff, reinforced by loyalty and long service. When accounts from staff surface through a reputable intermediary, observers infer a breakdown of silence prompted by seriousness rather than grievance. The decision to speak, even indirectly, suggests a belief that the public interest outweighs personal risk. Public reaction reflects that perception. Many readers and viewers respond less to salacious detail than to location. Sandringham occupies symbolic space within the monarchy. It represents continuity, privacy, and tradition. Allegations rooted there feel invasive to the institution itself, rather than confined to one individual. What follows next requires context beyond a single discovery. The allegation gains force when placed alongside documented emails, photographs, and contradictions that have accumulated around Andrew's public statements. That wider pattern determines whether this account stands as an isolated shock or as one more piece in a larger, deeply troubling picture. The allegation gains weight once placed alongside the documentary record that already surrounds Prince Andrew. Over the past several years, his name has resurfaced repeatedly through photographs, emails, flight references, and witness accounts connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Each disclosure alone raised questions. Taken together, they form a pattern that resists dismissal.
An email released from the Jeffrey Epstein file suggests Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had a massage at Ghislaine Maxwell's house. The revelations were made from a 2015 email. In the email, she told Mr. Epstein she had to distance from him in a statement, writing, and they need me to say I was not aware of massage with Andrew in my...
One image has become central to that pattern. It shows Andrew seated casually, surrounded by several young women, with Maxwell standing nearby smiling. The photograph circulated again after recent document releases, renewing public focus. Andrew has offered shifting explanations over time, including claims of poor judgment and blurred memory. Yet the image persists because it anchors association in a visual record rather than recollection. Emails deepen that record. Messages attributed to Andrew from the early 2000s show familiarity with Maxwell that extends beyond polite acquaintance. In one widely cited exchange, he writes from a royal residence adopting a playful tone and referencing inappropriate friends. Maxwell's reply mirrors that tone. Read plainly, the language conveys ease and shared understanding rather than distance. Andrew later described such communications as harmless. Critics argue the wording tells its own story. The significance of these emails lies less in individual phrases and more in timing. They date to a period when Epstein's behavior had already raised concerns in certain circles. Public knowledge was limited, yet private awareness appears broader. When Andrew later stated that he severed contact with Epstein in 2010, additional correspondence surfaced from 2011 suggesting continued warmth. That contradiction undermined confidence in his public account. Travel references add another layer. Flight logs and schedules place Andrew in proximity to Epstein and Maxwell across multiple locations over several years. While presence alone proves nothing, repetition alters perception. Patterns replace coincidence. Observers note that consistent overlap requires explanation, especially given Andrew's senior position and access to advisors.
Of the Epstein files show more and more photographs of Andrew and, in fact, what he has done to the royal reputation. The parties, shooting parties, one party where the photograph is taken, we believe, although there's no context to the photograph, of Andrew in Sandringham lying across the laps of many women whose faces have been...
Against that backdrop, the Sandringham party bag allegation slots into an existing framework. It does not introduce a new theme. It reinforces an established one. Allegations of sexualized environments, blurred boundaries, and indulgent private behavior already shadow Andrew's reputation. A claim rooted in physical discovery inside a royal estate strengthens that narrative by moving from association to environment. Andrew's public defense strategy has followed a clear arc. Initial silence gave way to a highly controlled interview. That interview, intended to resolve questions, produced the opposite effect. Viewers focused on his tone, confidence, and certainty rather than reassurance. Statements about memory gaps and medical explanations invited skepticism. Public trust eroded further. Subsequent legal developments intensified scrutiny. Andrew reached a financial settlement with Virginia Giuffre, avoiding a trial that would have required testimony under oath. While settlements resolve civil disputes, they leave factual questions unanswered. Andrew framed the agreement as closure. Critics viewed it as avoidance. The gap between legal resolution and public accountability widened. Institutional responses followed. Andrew stepped back from public duties. Military affiliations and patronages fell away. Use of royal styling ended. These measures signaled internal recognition of reputational damage. Yet they stopped short of direct acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The monarchy drew a line between distancing and condemnation. That distinction matters because new material continues to emerge. Recent document releases by U.S. authorities revived interest in long-settled narratives. Each wave of material pulls older claims back into circulation, inviting reassessment. The party bag allegation benefits from that environment. Audiences primed by years of exposure approach new claims with readiness rather than disbelief. Another factor complicates Andrew's position: refusal to cooperate with U.S. investigators. Requests for interviews met silence. British law offers limited compulsion. The result feels lopsided. Questions accumulate while answers remain absent. Silence intended as protection increasingly reads as strategy rather than prudence.
There you go, if you can see that. That is a group of individuals, and most of their identities redacted, but there is a woman standing in the back row, that's Ghislaine Maxwell. There is a man lying across the laps of the woman sitting down, and you see it in better quality there. That is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Public reaction reflects fatigue mixed with anger. Many observers separate the individual from the institution, yet the separation strains under repetition. Sandringham, Balmoral, royal residences appear repeatedly in the story. The spaces themselves become characters, reinforcing the sense that private behavior spilled into institutional space. For the monarchy, the challenge centers on containment. Each revelation tests the boundary between historical issue and present risk. Andrew's exclusion from recent gatherings suggests awareness of optics, yet absence does little to address underlying concerns. The story persists because evidence persists. At this point, the focus shifts from allegation toward consequence. The question moves beyond whether claims align. It turns toward response. What mechanisms exist when legal systems stall and institutions hesitate? What form of accountability satisfies public expectation when criminal adjudication remains distant? The answers shape what comes next. With every email resurfacing, every photograph recirculated, every staff account revived, pressure builds. The Sandringham allegation sharpens that pressure by grounding it in place and practice rather than abstract association. Whether that pressure leads to further action depends on forces beyond Andrew himself. Forces now facing scrutiny as intense as the man they once protected. What remains after years of allegations, documents, images, and silence is a question that refuses to fade: accountability. Titles have gone, appearances have ended, privileges have narrowed, yet the core issue still sits unresolved, suspended between legal limitation and moral expectation. Prince Andrew continues to live a life insulated from the consequences many expected. Residences changed, public roles vanished, comfort endured. Horses, security, and private transport remained part of daily routine. For large sections of the public, that contrast fuels resentment rather than closure. Removal from view feels cosmetic when deeper questions remain unanswered.
I can tell you there is more to the British connection, Matt. That comes in Jeffrey Epstein's contacts book. And I do stress again that to be in Epstein's contacts book does not indicate or reflect anything to do with his criminal activity at all. It merely tells us.
Institutions often rely on time as a solvent. Scandals fade, attention shifts, memory softens. In this case, time has worked in reverse. Each year has added material rather than burying it. Emails resurfaced, photographs reappeared, staff accounts emerged, legal filings reopened public interest. Silence amplified suspicion instead of easing it. For the monarchy, the dilemma cuts deeper than one individual. Every unanswered allegation tests institutional credibility. The crown depends on public consent built on restraint, duty, and moral authority. When one figure repeatedly draws controversy, distance alone struggles to protect that authority. Andrew's story keeps returning because the system around him appears hesitant to confront it fully. Legal reality complicates matters. British law offers limited pathways. American authorities requested cooperation. Interviews were declined. Without testimony under oath, factual resolution remains elusive. Courts address evidence. Public trust responds to transparency. When transparency fails to arrive, speculation fills the gap. That gap has become fertile ground for anger. Many view financial settlements as procedural endings rather than moral ones. Settlements close cases. They leave narratives intact. Without sworn testimony, denial competes with documentation. In that environment, public judgment forms independently of verdicts. Andrew's defenders emphasize presumption of innocence and legal boundaries. Critics emphasize pattern and persistence. Both positions coexist uneasily. The monarchy traditionally avoids direct confrontation, preferring quiet, management. This approach worked during earlier eras. The modern media environment operates differently. Digital archives preserve every statement. Contradictions endure indefinitely. The Sandringham allegation sharpened that tension. It connected behavior to a royal estate rather than distant parties or foreign residences. Staff accounts carry particular resonance because they arise from duty rather than grievance. When people responsible for maintaining private spaces speak indirectly through credible authors, audiences listen. If you value analysis grounded in documented sources rather than speculation, subscribe to the channel. These stories don't end with headlines. In future episodes, continue tracing what happens after public attention fades.
Once a senior royal, now stripped of title, status and standing. Tonight, Prince Andrew faces fresh scrutiny. The Metropolitan Police confirm they're looking into claims he tried to dig up private information about the woman who accused him of...
Leadership transitions within the monarchy altered internal dynamics. King Charles moved toward streamlining, reducing visible association. Prince William emphasized future-facing stability. These efforts signal awareness of reputational cost. Yet they stop short of addressing the core narrative head-on. Public patience erodes when process replaces explanation. Many ask a simple question: what accountability looks like in absence of prosecution? For some, it means sworn testimony. For others, it means full cooperation with investigators. For others still, it means explicit acknowledgement of harm. Silence satisfies none of these expectations. The cost extends beyond Andrew himself. Each resurgence pulls the monarchy back into defensive posture. Media cycles refocus on old wounds. Charitable work and public initiatives struggle to dominate headlines. Institutional energy diverts toward containment rather than leadership. Observers also note generational contrast. Younger royals operate under constant scrutiny shaped by transparency norms. The expectation differs sharply from past decades. What once resolved quietly now demands visible process. Failure to adapt risks widening the gap between institution and audience. Andrew appears to believe endurance will outlast attention. Evidence suggests otherwise. Every document release renews interest. Every anniversary revives discussion. Every staff account reinforces narrative continuity. Waiting becomes a gamble rather than strategy. At this stage, the question shifts decisively toward choice. Institutions choose whether to clarify, cooperate, or continue containment. Each path carries consequence. Continued silence preserves legal positioning while eroding trust. Engagement risks exposure while offering resolution. The balance grows harder with time.
Virginia Giuffre alleged she was forced to have sex with Andrew, and this week more revelations are expected from a book she wrote before taking her own life. ITV News understands that hours before this now infamous photo emerged in 2011,
Public discourse increasingly frames the issue around values rather than legality. Accountability, transparency, responsibility. These concepts resonate regardless of jurisdiction. When an institution claims moral leadership, audiences expect alignment between principle and action. The monarchy faces a narrowing window. Addressing unresolved questions proactively could reclaim narrative, control. Allowing revelations to dictate rhythm prolongs damage. History shows that unresolved scandals linger far longer than confronted ones. So the story arrives at its present moment. Allegations rooted in royal estates, documents released across oceans, silence maintained through years of pressure, privileges reduced without closure, an institution weighing caution against credibility. The outcome remains unwritten, yet public engagement shapes that outcome more than private calculation. Attention sustains accountability. Questions demand answers. Pressure influences decision-making. If you want continued coverage grounded in evidence rather than rumor, subscribe to the channel. Share this analysis. Add your perspective in the comments.